Hi everyone, my name is Rob Stewart, and I'm here today to talk about loosening the grip of anxiety. I'm a life coach and I coach people who have anxiety to go and do things despite their anxiety. And today I'm going to tell you the story of how I started coaching people with anxiety, what we've done to help loosen that grip, what you can do as well to impact anxiety. And there are going to be a number of slides I'm going to take you through. Why should you listen to me? Well, I had the pleasure of coaching NHS patients for about 16 months, and I was brought in to a GP network, so it's a collection of surgeries serving about 35,000 people down in the Bournemouth and Christchurch area. And the original agenda was to help people who had diabetes, depression, and obesity to help them make positive changes to impact their health in a positive way. Um, so that was the admirable. Well-meaning agenda of the GP practices. But by having further conversations with my clients, so they were patients, there was a common theme with many people, and that was that they were feeling anxious. Now, this also coincided with the arrival of COVID and that initial lockdown where we just didn't know really what was happening or what life was going to look like. So um, COVID itself and lockdown was the cause of some people's anxiety. It was the tipping point for other people's anxiety, and it was so prevalent amongst the people that I was talking to that I designed a course to do some group coaching called "Loosening the Grip of Anxiety." So it wasn't designed to treat anxiety, but it was designed to help people do things despite their anxiety and change their perspective on it. So I'm going to explain about that today. Um, Victoria, if I could have the first slide, that'd be fantastic. Thank you very much. There we go. And before we begin, Victoria, would you mind, just to get some housekeeping out of the way, would you mind putting the first link for the free offer into the chat for everyone to look at? So with all the talks I'm doing, so yesterday's talk on how to start talking today, loosening the grip of anxiety, and on Friday at 11 a.m. I'll be talking about developing a purposeful inner team. I want to make a free offer to you for you to continue a conversation with me. So you can use the link to book yourself a free consultation, and I can listen to you, listen to what you're facing, and to see if there might be a fit for you and I to do some work together. In that session, you can experience some coaching as well, and I promise that you'll walk away having a positive experience. So that's that first thing. So thank you very much, Victoria. Okay, so loosening the grip of anxiety. I saw this hand in a museum in America, and that's how I felt uh, at different times in my life. I had anxiety. Well, here's a good thing. Everyone has anxiety. We're not going to get rid of it. We might be able to change our relationship with it, but we have anxiety for a reason. It's a skill set. It helps us stay alive. But sometimes it can become a bit of a monster. It can try to represent us on all levels, on all fronts. And so that's that kind of space where I tend to help people. So anxiety is an overestimation of a perceived threat and an underestimation of your ability to deal with it. I wonder if anyone is thinking of anything that might fall under that description. And if you do have anything, please do add it into the comment section, because it's great for hi Yvonne, it's great to share, because when you share something, you might have just plucked a thought out of somebody else's head and they go, oh yes, I'm thinking the same thing too. So where do you overestimate a perceived threat in life, and where do you underestimate your ability to deal with it? I mean, at a basic level, if you are stood on a diving platform 10 meters above a pool, you may well have some anxiety. I don't like heights that much, so walking to the edge of that platform is a major deal for me, let alone jumping off. I have done it, but the feelings never change. In fact, I can feel almost like an ache in my feet right now thinking about it. So anxiety has physical manifestations. We'll go into that today. Hi, Stevie. Hello. Work. Victoria says a doctor's appointment. Yeah, the white coat syndrome. Yeah, when we go to the doctors, see a doctor or a nurse or a health worker, if we have our blood pressure taken, our blood pressure can quite often be higher than it usually is, and that's that white coat syndrome. Um, Stevie says work. Yeah, I've definitely had anxiety around work before. Um, Hi Moira, work, lack of sleep. Joe, anything new really? Interesting, interesting. So that might be the unknown. Maybe Joe, is that, could we categorize that as, if it's something new, therefore is it unknown? Therefore, you may have some anxious thoughts around that. Hi Kaza, feeling inadequate. Yes, I definitely have that feeling from time to time. You're not alone. Um, so thank you so much for your comments. Right, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, I love this diagram. The way I sometimes introduce anxiety is that it can be a perspective on life or to do with a particular topic. So I've helped people who have health anxiety. That is a topic, and they are looking at that topic from a particular point of view. So let's say the red square here is what they see with regard to their health. So they're looking at that shape from the right hand side and they see a square. Somebody else might look at health and have no anxiety at all, and therefore they're looking maybe from the left and seeing that round projection on the wall, and maybe looking at this edge on is the truth, is seeing something in its entirety. So stepping back from something, but quite often we can be locked in a view or perspective, and anxiety can play a role in that. Oh, thanks for some more comments. Hi, Sarah. Self-esteem. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Self-esteem, and anxiety. I'm going to let that settle and sit with me for a bit. Hi, Sonia. Grieving. My mum has Alzheimer's and is having end-of-life treatment, and my stomach feels like a washing machine. And I can't motivate myself. That sounds really difficult to deal with. I'm sorry that you're facing that. But thank you so much for sharing. Um, I love the use of saying your stomach feels like a washing machine. I think that really tells us all something about what you're going through. Hi, Jackie. Is worrying the same as anxiety? I'm going to ask you a question then, Jackie. What do you think? And I'm not trying to uh, shift responsibility. There's no right or wrong here. Let's just be interested about anxiety. Let's be interested in, what do you think? Is worrying the same as anxiety? I will. I'll give you my response to that question in a moment. Hi, Alan. Yvonne says meeting new people on my own. Okay. Sue, I am in much the same position as you, but with my daughter. So I think Sue's comment refers to Sonia's comment. Sue, thanks for sharing, and Sonia, thanks for starting that additional dialogue there. Hi, Lisa. Being a slave to phobic anxiety, don't travel far. Okay. Alan, yes, same. I would say I'm not sure what that one refers to, but again, we can see our little community forming here by all of us talking and sharing. We are finding common ground. Jackie, my anxious thoughts can get stuck in a loop, sort of positive feedback loop, we might say. Lack of fresh evidence, so you're going around in the same cycle, quite common there. And I don't mean that quite common, therefore don't worry about it or don't be concerned. I'm saying that other people do feel the same. You're not alone. Hi, Maura. It is that I was late this morning and snapped when some people made comments about me late for swimming. Okay, so I'm going to go back and look at Moira's comment. Oh, sea swimming. Oh, Moira, yes, love sea swimming. Moira, what is it that sea swimming does for you in relation to your anxiety? I can see that we're going to get involved in this chat now, and the slides are going to take a backseat. I am going to go to the slides. Mandy, hi Andy. Anxiety that something bad will happen to my kids and hubby. Yeah, I have that about my family. Um, yeah, I yeah, I have that. I do have that, and I think that I have those thoughts, And because I have them, I'm aware of them, and therefore they're not going to happen. That's how my brain works. Quite odd. Um, let's have a look. Anxiety and worry the same, I would say. Pretty similar. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for clarifying. Sonia, breathing is similar feelings as anxiety feels like you are drowning sometimes, so you need to take deep breaths. Hmm. We're going to talk about breathing. Thanks for that prompt. Move on. Knots in stomach, can't eat or sleep properly, and you lose confidence in yourself. Hmm. Yeah, I'm now holding my stomach thinking about that. Moira, I can conquer lots of things if I can conquer the sea. It changes your perspective. The disconnection from land is amazing. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, especially if you go into water that's a bit cold. I mean, that's become a big thing in terms of the kind of Wim Hof method that lots of people might be aware of. It's a big interruption, a physical interruption that kind of feeds into the mind because you can't ignore the fact that you are going into water, especially when you get your face submerged. There's something that happens, a trigger response in the body that happens. It's very calming to immerse your face in water. So sometimes it's not just enough to get your shoulders underneath, but to dunk your head as well. Yeah, more. I couldn't agree more. Um, right, so we're going to go to the slides. Keep the comments coming. Um, so the perspective is what we were talking about before. About what you see can be different when anxiety is sort of representing you. And this diagram I use with the course, it's a representation of sort of different ways that the mind can work. So the fellow on the right here, it shows a thought process, a conscious thought process of thinking and planning in relation to a primal emotion. So the emotion is that involuntary feeling we get when something happens, and that's a bit different to the rodent on the right, on the left hand side, where it just stays as a primal emotion. And there's some words in this diagram. One of the things we did was choose where these which part of the diagram these words corresponded to. And on the left here we have the things that course attendees associated with their anxiety. So reaction, reliving something, the fight, flight, or freeze scenario. The same. So this is a repeating process. Feeling tired takes a lot of energy. Being anxious, I know that from my own personal experience. Um, Emotions, yes, we experience emotions. Now, I can't remember what that refers to exactly, but maybe someone felt like that right then and there in that moment. It's a fast flight. Being a child, uh, being recalled back to a time in their life as a child. A glance. This was with reference to taking a glance at something, not really understanding what it was, but getting in a reaction from just glancing at something. They're curious about anxiety. It is me. Someone saying, I am just an anxious person. That was what that was in reference to. And I would offer that maybe you are someone with anxiety rather than you are an anxious person. And that's an interesting conversation to get involved with. Say no more. I can't remember what that was to do with, but freeze again. So the just to help people recognise their anxiety. That's what that exercise was used for. So emotions and feelings. Where what role, I should say, underneath the lovely banner of the Royal Voluntary Service, emotions and feelings. What role do they play with anxiety? So we have a deep ancient brain structure, which is triggered into action by an event happening. It can be physical and instinctive. It's a response to a stimulus, and it's the limbic system. It can be illogical, irrational, unreasonable, and it can be your initial attitude to something rather than over time processing and becoming a thought or a feeling. So, I mean, think about being a cave person back in the day. Lots of dangers out there, lots of saber-toothed tigers. So your anxiety kept you alive from one day to the next. If you heard a rustling in the bush, your anxiety might think that is danger. It is time to get out of here, and you run away, and then you survive until the next day. So there you have evidence, as far as you're concerned, that that approach works. And this is about the positive feedback loop that we were talking about earlier. Um, so you use it again because it worked and because you're alive. That's a very basic way of describing our response to a stimulus. But you can kind of see that uh, that positive feedback loop can develop more and more and more. So I'll give you another example. Um, a young girl with her family goes to a park, and a big scary dog runs up to her and starts barking. Now, the little girl doesn't see the ball that's next to her on the ground. She just sees a really angry looking dog barking at her. The dog just wants her to throw the ball. So the girl runs back to her home at the edge of the park. She's now away from the dog. She's away from the danger. She feels safe. So running away works. The next time she's in a park, she might just see the dog before the dog's seen her, and it triggers the same response. So she runs back home. Um, that works. She's safe, and so she decides subconsciously to use that again until the park is classed as a dangerous area, so she doesn't leave home. So life can get small with anxiety. Um, I experienced that in my early 20s, where I became a bit of a recluse in my 40th university. And it's because, well, I'll come on to that in a minute. I've got some slides around that. Okay, moving on. Right. So, what arrives with your anxiety? So, we said it was an emotional, sort of irrational response to something. This is the feelings and emotion wheel I mentioned in in yesterday's talk. You can do a certain image search online and find various iterations of this. At the center of the diagram are 7 recognized emotions, and then from that, fanning out, or kind of the feelings and thoughts that can come from those emotions. So I'm in, and here we have, if you look at the fearful um, emotion. So if someone runs up behind you and says boo, you might be fearful, but what does that then become? Uh, well, we have anxiety there. We have also insecure, weak, rejected, threatened. So if we follow threatened out, what does that become? Nervous, exposed. So I invite any of you watching to do an image search of this diagram and use it as a way to explore your anxiety, because you might see things on here that you haven't necessarily thought about. And one thing I want to today to do is to help you be interested about your anxiety rather than something to come away from it, to sort of stay at that coalface a little bit and investigate it. Let's have any more. Well, we've got lots of more chat. Oh, yeah. So Moira, you have the diagram. Great, 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 great. Sonia, nice tip from Sonia. If I have palpitations, I run the cold water tap over my wrists, and this helps calm and cool me down. So Sonia, great. I want to add that to what I've got to offer in terms of interrupting anxiety. We'll come on to that in a little bit. Okay. So who has anxiety? All of us. We all do. I think this slide's coming in the wrong order, but we all have anxiety. It is useful though. Um, um, as I said, it can help keep you alive. But I used to be a teacher. Used to teach primary school children and secondary school children, taking kids across the world on different trips. And there's a really good time to be anxious. Um, we'll talk about risk assessments later on. But I remember helping get, I think, 100 kids across Paris on the metro system. And anxiety was really useful because it got me into a heightened state where we had those 100 children stretched on a platform of a metro train, and they all had to get on with all their bags, a lot of bags involved. And anxiety helped me run around back and forth, sometimes literally shoving kids on the train who were dragging their feet, just to make sure we all got on that one train to make our connecting train or connecting flight. So we all have anxiety. It can be useful, but sometimes it can get in the way. Okay, I want you to meet the anxiety of others. So I mentioned that I coached NHS patients. On one of the courses, I happen to have, I did this for each course. So I got people to draw their anxiety. And I happen to have some pretty good artists on this course. It was quite a surprise when they all produced pictorial representations of their anxiety. I have the permission to use these, um, and everyone's journey was different. Um, uh, it was uh, it was really interesting to see people witness the anxiety of others, to find commonalities, to find differences, and again, it just helped us stay at that coal face. So I think we're going to look at one of these in more detail. Here we go. Okay, so this particular character, and what is this? So it's a pictorial representation of someone's anxiety. This is so they can get to know their anxiety more rather than just kind of be ruled by it. Um, I think anxiety thrives on a lack of fresh evidence to the contrary. I imagine this character is a bit like an agent provocateur, doesn't necessarily want to be under the spotlight or be seen. So what we agreed to do is to characterize our anxiety so that the each client can notice the presence of their anxiety, to notice what might trigger it, so they can look to the future, see what's coming in terms of events in their life. They can also look at a particular moment in time, so where they are right now, or look retrospectively and see the role that their anxiety played. So this character was called Control. This is to do with health anxiety. And I've written down on in the white words there, I've written down what's on the diagram in case you can't read it. So this is what would happen to this person when they're anxious: juddering, breathing, crying, shaking, unaware of surroundings. So a bit like a blinkered view. So they're just focusing on one thing that someone could walk into the room, they wouldn't notice necessarily. Unable to talk, so muted, they're tired, lost, they feel controlled, lack of focus, angry, disappointed, exhausted, fed up, fearful. That's the cost of their anxiety. And this person struggled to leave the house, struggled to walk their dog. There we go. So then we gave some more detail to their anxiety. We named it control. Now, this is where things started to change. We imagined we could interview control, and we asked control, what's your raison d'etre? What are you trying to do? Because you exist in this person. Why are you there? What's your purpose? And the client came up with that control is trying to protect their health. We would ask other questions. What is their truth? What does control believe about the world? And control felt there was danger everywhere. What did they desperately want my client to know? We would go on to different layers and really try and produce, well, this is a wanted poster. Okay. Wanted in not necessarily a criminal way. What we would try and do is make them known so that we started to get to know their anxiety, so we could work out where they were useful. And that's why I've underlined superpower at the bottom, because we know if it's a saber-toothed tiger outside, anxiety is useful. Um, we know where it's not useful. Let's say if you're in a room with family in a very safe environment, there are no saber-toothed tigers. Okay, so but anxiety can't see that. This is how we'd frame it. Your anxiety can't see that because your anxiety thinks they are always needed. And yesterday we talked about our team members. So we all have an inner team, and my inner team, I imagine it like a football pitch, and there are different positions to be played. But sometimes one player inside of us, like anxiety, is representing us on all positions. So in attack, in defense, in midfield, in goal, because anxiety thinks it's needed everywhere. And what we're trying to do by taking us through this exercise is we're trying to develop your inner role model, okay, which is more like a team manager who oversees the different team members, and anxiety, or in this case, this person called control, is one of those team members. So we're trying to get them to be known so that we can actually access them more consciously, or recognize them, their presence more consciously. And here you go. This is a diagram from yesterday's talk. So the hexagons represent different members of my team. Okay. I've got, here we go, the anxious. I've added control. That's the name of the person in the previous diagram. Yesterday we were talking about not talking. That is a skill set. Not talking is a skill set because it means that we can listen. So that's a team member I like having on board, but I don't want to not talk all the time because that means that I'm holding things inside. And yesterday's talk investigated that. Friday's talk, the purposeful one. So there are different team members, and the reason I've got my logo here on the left-hand side is that that logo. I'm the bear, okay? I'm the Sherpa bear, so I go on journeys with people. Um, I create a protective coaching space for people to really grow as individuals and achieve what they want to achieve, and that's the client growing in that space to be the inner role model that I believe is inside of everyone, and every inner role model has a team sitting behind them. Okay, so this is another. This one's interesting. This is come from the same person. Um, So on one level, this person's anxiety has them just be the best mum, parent, homeowner in the world, who just everything is spick and span, everything is done and dusted, hair is perfect, makeup's perfect. But there was another side to this person's anxiety, which was the little girl on the right hand side, and I think I've expanded that picture. There we go. So I am no good at my job. I am so lonely. My husband will get sick of this. I'm not good enough. I'm always scared. I'm so tired. People find me annoying. Okay, so this was very interesting for this person to actually identify some different layers to their anxiety. So you can see how it's a very personal journey for all of us. Um, Lovely to see support here in the chat. I'm seeing different chats pop up, so thank you so much, everyone, for getting involved. And I will look at those. And by the way, if you want to talk to me, please do use that link to book yourself a free chat with me. You can also email me rob@shepherdbearcoaching.com if you have any questions for me as well, or if you want to continue the conversation. Okay. So in relation to producing those wanted posters, I tried to get my clients to be that role model to their anxiety. So be that manager of the team. So we would witness so what it is to be the character from your wanted poster using a journal. I get them to write down about their. Where's my journal? My journal's somewhere around here. I keep a diary. I have a character that I keep an eye of in my life called the Nectar Nurse that I've invented in my head, and that's a way of characterizing a particular behavior in my life. And I write about that in my diary. I think, were they here today? What triggered them? Um, what's coming up? Will they then rear their head? So getting to know the person you wanted poster using a journal is really powerful. Recognize its fears, its limiting beliefs, its limitations, and also recognize what it's trying to do for you. Because amongst that is something that's useful to you, but also something that can be detrimental as well. Empathize with it, but not, or don't be taken along by it. So recognize how it feels, how your anxiety feels. Imagine if you could talk to your anxiety. Imagine it was sat next to you with all its worries and just saying what it was thinking, what it was worrying about. Well, empathy plays a big role in being understood. And I can see a lot of empathy in the chat today. Understand what your anxiety is leading you towards, but also away from. So your anxiety might think it's leading you towards safety, but I know my anxiety led me towards a really small, limited life. And it was leading me away from community, amongst other things. Define its superpower and where a version of it will be useful to you. I think it's really important because imagine if you did have a team member who was trying their very best to help you, but in trying so hard, they were um, negatively impacting your team. Imagine a team manager sitting down with that team member, that player, and with empathy, with understanding, listening, and actually helping them recognize where they're great. Now, anxiety will continue to rear its head for the rest of our lives, but I think the sooner we can recognize what's going on, the sooner we can make a choice as to whether or not we're going to completely let ourselves submit to that anxiety, or whether we can start to experiment and try something a bit different. And this is why I've written act down at the bottom. Is we can go into action around this, and it doesn't matter how small the action is. We'll come into what that is, what that means in a minute. Um, but just starting to act in a way that demonstrates your consciousness around your anxiety. Okay, next slide. Oh, before we do, let's have a look at the chat here. Have a quick look. Oh, I really resonate with that person, Mandy. Okay, Mandy, yes. Uh, oh, lovely. Sonia, so hi, Sue. I'm so sorry you're going through a sad time with your daughter. I would like you to offer my friendship if you would like that. Fantastic. Thank you. Anna Williams, thank you. I just save it. Okay. Um, yeah, and as Victoria, so who's controlling the chat here from the virtual village hall, you can watch the sessions back at any time once finished. So you can steer other people towards if you think they will find it helpful. Sonia, I always take a bottle of water with me and use sipping water as a crutch. And if I'm stuck in traffic jams, I use EFT, tapping. Love it. Emotional freedom technique. Oh my word. If any of you want to try that out, you can book yourself, use the link, book yourself a free session. I use that with my clients quite a bit. Okay. EF tapping on my legs to help relax, and it really helps. Also imagining I am elsewhere in a calm, quiet space. Amazing. Brilliant. Brilliant suggestion, Sonia. Yeah, EFT, emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as tapping, is literally tapping on different parts of the body. There's a whole process to go through about exploring symptoms, emotions, events, and belief systems, amongst other things. I really rate it. I started using that when I was coaching NHS patients, because having read a book called "The Body Keeps the Score" by Bessel van der Kolk, um, and it was a well, that's a whole massive other story. But I only kept using it because I kept getting results with my clients. Okay, so it's a really good way to interrupt a thought pattern. That's a very basic way of explaining tapping. If you'd like to try it, book yourself a session. Um, the text goes so fast I can't read it. I hopefully, Anne, you can scroll back and find what you need to find. Sonia, I do think anxiety is also hereditary, as my mum, her sisters, and my cousins have it. That's really interesting. So your mum, her sisters, and your cousin have it. Right. So Sonia, I don't know you. Okay. So, but if I were to just stand back from that bit of information, if I'm anxious, let's say going back to me being a teacher, if I'm really anxious generally, what impact do you think that will have on the children who are in my class? I am going to suggest that just by sheer osmosis, the anxiety will be transferred to somebody else, because they're going to pick up on my behavior, my thought patterns, my decisions. So then I see anxiety in them because I've, in a way, delivered that to them. I'm not making anyone right or wrong here. I'm just being interested. And so they might act anxious, and because they're acting anxious, that makes me more so positive feedback loop. So just interesting about, if we have people around us who are also anxious, what's the impact that has on our lives? Um, okay, right. So we're going to the next slide, but I am very distracted by the chat. Fantastic chat going on. Thank you very much. How to interrupt the broadcast of anxiety to get access to all of you. Right. So Moira, was it you saying about running your wrists under? No, Moira was a swimming. Yes. So, okay, if let's say you had anxious thoughts and suddenly someone dumped a big bucket of cold water over your head, that would interrupt things. Okay, so we're looking at ways to interrupt the the broadcast of anxiety. So I've got some tips for you here, but swimming in cool water safely with other people, I might say, you do it at your own risk, but that seems to be something that people are adopting and have been adopting in my local area quite a lot since lockdown, since COVID first arrived. Running your wrists under cold water. What basically things which get you into your body and out of here. That's how I'd summarize it. So I've got some tips for you. Okay, take your thumb and your second finger and follow my instructions closely. I want you to try and make the lightest patch of contact between that thumb and that finger. And look closely, look at the fingerprints on each digit. Imagine it's the tips, the ridges of the fingerprints touching and not the troughs. This is the lightest amount of contact. Now, in between your thumb and your finger is the wing of a butterfly. We want to hold enough contact to stop the butterfly from fluttering away, but we can't damage the wing. So just focus on holding that contact patch. Now, I want to stroke that wing. So I'm going to move my finger backwards and forwards, feel every single ridge of the fingerprints on each digit, make contact, stroke that butterfly wing. What are you thinking about? We're asking you to do something physical that requires a lot of concentration. And I find, and my clients find, that that is a brilliant way to interrupt a thought pattern. It doesn't have to be anxiety, it can be anything. You want to break from something. It could be just noise. If you find yourself in a noisy environment, you want to take yourself away from it, but you can't physically move away from it. We're looking at taking your focus from somewhere else onto something very specific. So the butterfly technique. Okay, the young boy there smiling. Everyone smile. It has an effect. The great thing is that you can control this. You've got your smile there with you all the time. It feels different to talk with a smile. You sound different on the phone if you talk with a smile. Now, you might not feel like smiling when you're anxious, but does the cart come before the horse or the horse before the cart? No, sorry. Chicken or egg? Chicken or egg? That's what I'm thinking. Uh, okay, I feel anxious, so anxious people don't smile. Okay, what happens if you do smile? Do you interrupt that internal dialogue of anxiety? It's a smile. It's just different behavior than is represented by anxiety generally. Okay, then we have our furry friend with the big horns. Right, so quite often when we're anxious, or quite often when I'm anxious, I'll clench my jaw. Okay, now it's interesting. When you chew food, you generally chew food on one side of your mouth. Okay, and your body recognizes that you're chewing food, and you can move your mouth a bit like a cow, and it loosens the jaw. Now, there is a response we have when we clench our jaw shut. That's different to chewing. Our body recognizes that's different to chewing. We're no longer chewing. We are getting ready for something. So we need to loosen this up. So move your jaw like a cow. Okay. Picture of me in the bottom left-hand corner. That's me in the Purbex, getting out in nature. Literally change your geography. Move. Go somewhere else. I could just go to the other side of the room. Go to somewhere where you don't normally sit. Start small, but go outside. Look at nature. Go and look at a tree. Go look at the detail of a tree. It's amazing what you can see when you really focus. And you're focusing on something that is natural, that is pleasing to the eye. There's something calming about a combination of the greens and blues. So a green tree against a blue sky. Take yourself somewhere else and give yourself a dose of what nature has for us. Breathing. So, how do you breathe when you're anxious? Okay, we can sometimes breathe fast and shallow, and we can be taking in a lot of oxygen. And what we're doing is we're kind of giving our body a signal to get ready for something. Something's going to happen. So we are basically having our body on red alert. Ready, something's going to happen. Right? Is it going to be a start of a race? Am I going to be running 100 meters, or is it that saber-toothed tiger, or whatever we fear, whatever our anxiety is trying to tell us about? So change your breathing. So I want you to follow me. We're going to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 6. Now, sip the air as you breathe in. Don't, okay, otherwise you'll inflate like a balloon and flow away. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 6. We're going to do it 5 times. Okay? And just notice what happens to you. So, ready? 3, 2, 1. I feel quite peaceful. I feel my cheeks are slightly flushed and I feel slightly lightheaded. How do you feel? Do we have any comments on that? Judith, stroking the butterfly has helped me to relax my body. Good. Um, Naveed, not really. The air is polluted. Okay. Didn't know that, Naveed. Sorry to hear that. Hopefully you can get access to some cleaner air. Okay. Sonia says, there are different feelings with anxiety. Sometimes I get agitation with it all. So I find brisk walking, wearing headphones, listening to upbeat music, or doing star jumps until I feel calmer. Love it. What can we control? So everything inside this bag of skin is ours to control. So what can we do to interrupt that broadcast? So thank you, Sonia, for sharing. Um, what else do we have? Oh yeah, okay. Top left. Right. Okay, everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to use this to ground you in a present moment, in a present location. So you might be sat there with an anxious thought, just running away with you. Positive feedback loop. Off you go. You're living your anxiety fully. You know, we need to interrupt that. Butterfly technique is great for that. So we've already had some good responses to that. Thank you, Judith. So maybe that's an initial way of interrupting. Then loosening your jaw. Then maybe doing some breathing. Getting outside nature might not be the immediate solution. Maybe it is. But what can you do about the where you are presently? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5 things you can see: aloe vera plant, blanket, camera, books, keyboard, ruler. 4 things you can touch: ruler, laptop, glass of water, Bluetooth speaker. 3 things you can hear: my tinnitus, the fan that's on underneath my desk, keeping me cool, a siren way off in the distance. 2 things you can smell: my lasagna I had for lunch, my candle over there, just about. Um, and 1 thing you can taste. Now, if you struggle with this one, you can always taste the back of your hand. All we're doing, we're trying to attach you to your senses, okay, in the immediacy of you, because your anxiety might be telling you something that's true to your anxiety, and you might be in your living room and it's trying to have you worry about something that's not there. So by looking around and by seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and touching things, I'm assuring myself that maybe that dialogue isn't necessarily the truth. So I'm coming back with fresh evidence. And the version of you doing that is that kind of inner role model, that team manager. Okay. Because we're not going to really change the minds of our anxiety, so to speak. We want to step above it and notice that it's feeling that, but then make decisions that can be independent of that. Lastly, the lady at the bottom right hand corner. So, how do you sit or stand? What's your posture like when you have anxiety? Where do you look? I look at the ground actually. So let's change our posture. I want everyone to sit or stand up straight if you can. Okay. I want everyone to take your shoulders up to your ears, take them back and down so that your shirt stretches across your chest. I want you to reach your hands down to the floor. Okay. This is different to how my anxiety has my posture arranged. So again, chicken or egg. I'm demonstrating that I can do something different independent of my anxiety, despite what it's trying to tell me. Sonia, see, smell, touch, taste, and hear. Yes, yes. Sonia, looking at a card number plates and making sentences with letters and numbers. Like it. Very good. Okay, so we're interrupting anxiety. Those are some methods for you to use. And that's to help us move on to the next part. You might have noticed that there's another hexagon, fourth one that's got a name. It's called logic. So this is part of my team. Okay. Um, right. So I mentioned that I used to be a teacher. I have to fill out uh, risk assessment forms, especially when we're going on trips with students. And I use them to help people assess their anxiety with logic. So if you have a pen and a bit of paper, you can do this with me. You can do it in your head. You can do it on your phone as well. Um, but we're going to do some logic. Okay, I'll do a couple of examples. So if you haven't got the kit, the pen and the paper ready right now, I'll do a few examples. So let's read through this. Right, real world threat. We're trying to find. If we go back a few slides, a few slides. Ooh, whoa, quite a few. We're looking at trying to find out what the truth is. Okay. So we're in coaching speak, we might say the meta view, the 10,000-foot view, standing back and seeing everything and not just something, our anxiety has us looking at this and thinking that's dangerous, but we want to stand back a bit. Okay, so time to skip forward through some slides. We've done quite a lot today. Okay, I just want, yeah. Okay, so there's 6 steps. Number 1, identify what makes me anxious. WMMA. All right, so I'm going to give you. This is I'll give you some details to this in a minute. So we'll go through the 6 steps first. Second, you rate the worst case scenario outcome of what makes you anxious out of 10. All right, the worst case scenario outcome, 10 out of 10, that is death. Okay, I want to make that very clear. That the worst case scenario, ceasing to exist, and 1 is nothing that's going to happen. All right. So worst case scenario outcome, WCSO, of what makes you anxious happening. Number 3, you rate the likelihood of the worst case scenario outcome happening. So out of 10, 10, it is definitely going, it is a fact, it will happen. You can bet your house on it. And 1, it's never going to happen. Okay. So we have a rating out of 10 for that as well. And then what we do is we multiply the worst case scenario outcome by the likelihood of the worst case scenario outcome to get a real world threat score out of 100. And then we work out how much of your life energy you spend worrying about your WMMA or what makes you anxious. Excuse me. And then we look at how your life energy expenditure compares to that real world threat level. So I'll take you through an example. Okay. So my last year at university, I don't know why, but I became very, very anxious. And what made me anxious was that I thought everyone was talking about me and looking at me when I was walking down the street. I think that had me really just stare at the ground, hunch shoulders. I walk quickly. I didn't want to be outside. I'd often bump into people, be shocked by that. I had blinkers on. It was a real problem, real problem. So the worst case scenario outcome. So out of 10, 10 being death, what's the worst case scenario outcome of people looking and talking at me? well, talking about me, I've given it a very low score, 2 out of 10. Now, this is subjective data. Um, your numbers may differ. Okay, it's important that you write down what you think. Okay, so 2 out of 10. What's the likelihood of the worst case scenario? What was the worst case scenario, Rob? Think about this. The worst case scenario, maybe I thought that the worst case scenario outcome is that, I don't know, everyone got together of an evening and just spent all the time ridiculing me and talking about me. Okay. What's the likelihood of that worst case scenario happening? I rated that to 1.5 out of 10, like highly unlikely. So you times the 2, it should be 2, not 2.5. Let's say it was 2.5 out of 10 and 1.5 out of 10. You times the 2.5 times 1.5, you get 3 out of 100. So the real world threat of what makes me anxious was 3% out of 100, right? 3%. I estimated I was spending about 60% of my life energy worrying about it. So I was overspending my life energy by 57%. So my anxiety was applying itself, over applying itself by a great deal, when I could use some of that energy and time and effort on lots of other things. So yeah, that's imagine overpaying for anything by 57% and being told by a cashier, "You've given me this much, 57, too many pounds." Uh, you wouldn't want to do that. So the real world threat can help you apply logic to what your anxiety can't see. And I think a great time to do this is when you've done these interruption techniques, when you've interrupted that broadcast, that propaganda of anxiety, and we've got access to all of you, including the logic in your team. So then you can go, okay, let's go through a risk assessment. What makes me anxious? What's the worst case scenario of what makes me anxious out of 10? What's the likelihood of that thing happening out of 10? Times the former by the latter, you get a score out of 100, and then reflect on how much of my energy in a day am I giving over to that anxious worry, and work out any disparity between those two. It can work the other way. What happens if you're not worrying enough? Okay, so what happens if you, on your route to work, you walk across a 6-lane motorway and you are not applying enough anxiety? So what makes you, well, let's say the worst case scenario outcome is death, 10. What's the likelihood if you just nonchalantly walk across a motorway? 7, 8, I don't know, 9. So 90% real world threat, but you are spending only 10% of your life energy expenditure, then you're underspending your energy by 80%. So it can work in reverse. But since we're talking about anxiety, it's usually the previous way of using the technique. So I think maybe if you want to take a screenshot of that, there's quite a lot of information on that slide. I do recognize that. Again, if you want to ask me any questions, please book yourself a free session using the link in the beginning of the chat, the comment section, which Victoria provided. Victoria, maybe you can add that again into the chat now, just to add a fresh access. That would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, Sue, the trouble with that is for me that my daughter really will die. I found the butterfly helpful though. I'm really glad. Oh, thank you. I'm really glad, Sue, that you found it helpful. And there is the link. Thank you, Virtual Village Hall, aka Victoria. Okay, so, and then by doing that logic, this is, I imagine, putting on glasses of clarity, putting on glasses which allow you to see everything and not just the truth as your anxiety sees it. Okay. Right. So this is all me. Okay. This is all the things that I've done despite my anxiety. So that down the bottom in the middle, there's me as a teacher, geography teacher. That was my first teaching job, I think. These are the things that I do also to help my anxiety. So top right, I get into my body. I get into this physical space to get out of this if my anxiety is trying to rule the roost. I get into nature. You've seen that picture before. I get out into the world and experience it and change my perspectives. I do something which requires a lot of concentration. So there's me making the mast of a boat back in 2011. Um, I love what I used to be a carpenter. So for me, doing woodwork is getting out of here in a particular way and using my hands. And it's a bit like the butterfly technique. There's me swimming in December one year. Behind there is another guy called Rob, and he helped me get into the water when I was pretty anxious, actually. Um, and we got into the water at least once a week for a whole year. And I cannot tell you how that shifted my mindset and the positive impact that had on my days. Rob still goes in every day. I haven't been in this year yet. Uh, I have once or twice, but I intend to get back on that wagon. Um, Despite my anxiety, bottom right here, that's me talking to about 100 people on a beach, an event. So I recognize my anxiety and what it's trying to tell me. I play the role of that team leader, that inner role model, and I do things despite my anxiety. And I've come to learn actually that when my anxiety rears its head, it's sometimes an indication that I'm on the right path. And I can check in with myself. I can do the real world threat. I can do the 5 4 3 2 1. I can see what reality is, acknowledge that my anxiety is still there, and go and do things anyway. Um, Obviously, we're all different. We all have different journeys with anxiety. Um, a win for one person, it might be a huge win for somebody else. So this is just me sharing my journey. Um, Gardening, yeah, more, yeah, using your hands, getting in the earth, feeling the sensations of things, playing music. Thank you, Sue. Diamond, diamond painting. Yvonne, most of us can, afford canvases, but diamond painting, you're obviously doing well. But please explain. um, Moira, I joined a local group called Dare Dip. I guess that's to the outdoor swimming. Um, I'm organising a small event on the beach, yoga, circle, then dip. Brilliant, brilliant. Dare to dip. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, moving on. So, how do we continually create what we want? This is a very squirrely journey here, falling in love with the process. Um, if you want to develop physically, grow your bicep. I think I said this as an example in the last talk. It's it's not about having one big impact and then things to change. It's about turning up, continually turning up and trying and repeating that process. So that bicep grows by visiting the gym again and again and again. And with each visit, you learn how to use that muscle. And what we're talking about today is a process, a bit like a muscle, where when you learn more about it and learn to apply what we have talked about today, um, that muscle grows. It becomes more easily accessible, and how you feel will change. How you feel today is not forever. We're not want to acknowledge how you feel, but you are not your feelings, so to speak, and they can change. And it's about taking small and as frequent as possible steps to try something different and to fall in love with that process. And your anxiety might kick back, might not like you doing this, but maybe that's an indication that you are on a path to change. Okay, the process. Simply notice your anxiety. You can notice it in how you behave physically, the words you use, feeling your face, where you do or don't go. So simply notice your anxiety. Interruption techniques, breathing, smiling, chewing, being outdoors. Bring logic into the scenario, the real world threat. What is the truth here? Act. Oh, yeah, failure budget, act. We'll come back to failure budget in a minute. Go out there and get new evidence to the contrary. Your anxiety might ignore that evidence, but you are more than your anxiety. The evidence is for you to bolster your role as that inner role model, that team manager. Acknowledge yourself for any change that you make. It's really important. Well done, me, because I have challenged my anxiety today and found out something new. Champion yourself or others. You can do this. Okay, we've had lots of really supportive chat today. So well done for supporting and acknowledging each other. And I want to champion you all that you can go and make continued changes. Enjoy the process and repeat. I'll come back to point 4, failure budget. So this comes from an ex-PT client of mine, worked in IT, still works in IT. And there was a company that wanted the best IT system in the shortest amount of time. And he said, "What's your failure budget? What is your failure budget?" And they said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, to work out and deliver what you want, we need to go and try as many things as possible in the shortest amount of time and fail as quickly as possible, learn from those mistakes so that we can then get to the solution. So what's your failure budget?" When we often learn more by our mistakes than what we do right the first time. I think Elon Musk and SpaceX is a really good example of that. They not readily, but quite frequently crash a lot of rockets to find that they could develop a rocket that took off, took something into orbit in space, came back down and landed by itself. Okay, and that came from writing a failure budget. So when you're trying this process out, what failure budget are you going to grant yourself? The first time you try to do something despite your anxiety and you get a knockback, that can be encompassed in a failure budget, and you're worth it. You are worth that budget. Okay, so that's what I mean by failure budget. This little diagram is about, where do you apply that process? Where do you notice your anxiety? You can preempt it. So let's say your anxiety is triggered by family meetings and you've got one coming up in a month's time. Well, you know to expect the character from your wanted poster in that particular social scenario. So strategies used to interrupt your anxiety. What do you want to know from your anxiety? What is the truth? So you can preempt things. You can also notice something in the moment if you see yourself physically doing something that indicates your anxiety is present. And also, you can look back on a day or a moment and think, was my anxiety there? What can you learn from it? And this is about exploring you, getting to know yourself, your life from different viewpoints and perspectives. And this is what coaching does for people. So I help, as a coach, I help someone look at themselves from a whole range of different perspectives, different from the one that they usually occupy. And that's the advantage of working with people. That's the advantage of this chat today, of hearing from different people. I'm not going to get distracted by the chat just now. I want to get through these slides. So these are the principles that I take people through. It's an acronym of SHERPA, so Service, Health, Explore, Role Model, Purpose, and Action. And once we start interrupting anxiety, then these become more accessible because it's often that roadblock that stands in the way. So, when in terms of service, we're using coaching to work in service of the person that they want to be, and we look at ways that anxiety can be used to help deliver that, but also ways that it gets in the way. And we can look at health, the negative or positive impacts on our health. And there we go, bottom left-hand corner, that inner role model that I believe all my clients have. The person that is bigger than the problems that they are facing. And tomorrow, not tomorrow, Friday at 11 a.m., I'm talking about purpose. That's that middle bottom diagram, purpose. When we work out our purpose in life, it can help us gain even more clarity around how anxiety is or is not getting in the way. And then action. Going into action on a regular basis is a really powerful move against that, flexing that bicep and growing that muscle. We are here to serve your angina? No, your agenda, and not that of your anxiety. Okay, you are more than your anxiety. I'm interested in all of you, which includes your anxiety, but we're here to serve your agenda. Let's defend the health you have and design the health that which you want. Okay, this is up for grabs. This is up for grabs. It may seem like an uphill task, but collaboration really is the key. Get to know yourself. Yes, we know that one. Oh yeah, okay. This is a belief from the school of coaching that I've come from. You are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, um, and you are your inner role model. So there's nothing missing. There's nothing, unless you have a medically diagnosed uh, mental illness or disorder. My belief is that you are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. You have the answers in you, and the idea of coaching is to help extract those and bring those to the surface. And purpose, that's Friday's talk, is you, the best expression of you, having the impact you want to see in the world. And anxiety definitely got in the way of my purpose for a number of years. I'm pleased to say that it's not the case now. So don't forget, book yourself a free 45-minute discovery call using the link that is there. I can see it there, from the virtual village hall. Thank you, Victoria, for your support today. I want to thank you all for attending. This time has flown by. I love talking about this topic. I'd love to talk with you further if you wish to talk with me. And please share that appointment link with other people that you think may want to talk with me. I think, okay, let's talk about that quickly. So let's say you know somebody in your life who is anxious. Um, uh, how do you get them to talk to somebody? Well, there's a conversation there to be had around the agenda. So whose agenda is it that we're talking about? It sounds like in that setting, it could be your agenda if you wish someone to talk, to reach out to somebody and talk to them. So it's not easy, but asking questions. So would you like help with that? Is a good way to start, because we can lead a horse to water, but we can't always convince it to drink. So um, you can only do what you can do. And I think when people see you making positive changes to your life, that has an impact that you may not be aware of on others. So control what you can control, and be a role model to others. Okay, I think a PCC, a professionally certified coach. So um, I certified through the International Coaching Federation. I train with the Coaches Training Institute. So I'm a professionally trained and certified life coach. And you get your PCC. Oops, wrong one. You get your PCC, Alan, if you've done, I think, 500 hours of one-to-one coaching. I've done about 1,500 hours of one-to-one coaching plus group coaching as well. And if you get your masters, your MCC, you would have done 2,500 hours of coaching on a one-to-one basis. So that's what PCC means. Okay. Kaza, thank you very much. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Moira. Thank you, Sue. Thank you. Who else? Yvonne. Sonia, yes, said already. Naveed, thank you, Naveed. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Stevie. Stu. All these names. Anne, thank you very much. I think that might be everybody. My name is Rob Stewart. I am the Shepherd Bear. And thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Victoria, who from the Royal Voluntary Service, for helping make this happen. And I hope to see some of you on Friday at 11 a.m. Thank you very much.